European leaders are gathering in Brussels for their last summit of the year, with great pressing issues expected to spill over into 2023. A major focus for their talks is the war in Ukraine, while any response to the US's controversial inflation-busting policy will also be closely watched. But overhanging it all, the EU Qatar corruption scandal. For more, Rosie Burchard joins us live from Brussels. Now, Rosie, so many topics are on the agenda. How will they be prioritized so that something concrete emerges at the end of the summit?
Well, if leaders thought this might be a cosy just before Christmas set of talks that they could wrap up quickly and close the chapter of what has been a very turbulent year here in Europe, well, that is not going to be fulfilled. As you said, many of these big challenges spilling over into 2023. First of all, as leaders are currently discussing, they are looking at the discussion on transatlantic relations. So that is when it comes to ties with the US, which have been severely strained by the US flagship green policies. As you mentioned, this Inflation Reduction Act. Brussels says the subsidies which are granted under that US policy distort fair competition and could seriously disadvantage EU businesses. Now they are scrambling to trying to find a way to resolve that problem. They've got a kind of balancing act to achieve here. On the one hand, the EU is an integrated single market, so if they relax their rules on subsidies, then a big economy like Germany could offer many more bigger subsidies than a smaller one, for example, like Bulgaria. Then they'd have an internal distortion issue. So on the other hand, they're looking at trying to set up a sort of sovereign fund EU-wide through joint borrowing. But some countries, including Germany, are very sceptical of any further joint borrowing. So some big internal discussions to hash out there. Now, beyond that, of course, there is this big looming question of energy which comes up at all of these topics. EU countries are still, after months, at odds on whether and when to cap gas prices. On the one hand, you have countries which say, look, these prices have been spiraling this year. They are now not as high as we saw in the Europe summer around August, but they are still very high. It's having an impact on households. They want a major market intervention. And that's countries including Belgium, Italy, Poland. On the other side of the debate, countries including Germany and the Netherlands that say capping prices, putting a limit, would seriously endanger the security of supply, just as the European Union is trying to wean off of dependence on Russia. And of course, that big thing looming over these discussions, that probe into alleged corruption at heart of one of the European institutions, the European Parliament. Leaders say they don't want to discuss that in detail, but of course it is certainly a question of credibility for this European Union.
Thank you, Rosie. Rosie there updating us on that packed agenda on the last EU Leaders Summit of the year, reporting live from Brussels.